Hail, Jim Alexander.
The J, the I, the M, the M, the Y, the J, the I, the M is Jimmy. It's Jimmy.
Hello, Jim.
Radha, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Just trying to adjust to daily living. You know, it's weird times that we're in. You're kind of interested. How are you kind of coping? I know you're very much a working woman, always, on set or not, but what's this time has done kind of for you in a lot of ways?
Well, I've been watching a lot of movies every night. I'm like, that's sort of the end of the day kind of reprieve. So there's a bit of a rhythm to things, and I was sick for a little earlier than this lockdown began, so this has been going on for some time for me. But I've kind of come to this point where I'm like, oh, this is kind of a bit relaxing.
You usually don't have that time, in a weird way. This is kind of taking those back in time.
I know, and then you feel like I really want to use this time, not super constructively, because, there's a lot of people kind of like, I better get this done, I better, clean every single cupboard and learn how to speak French and, all that. I just want to relax a bit, finish off a few things and just be with the slower pace for a little bit. And then obviously at a certain point we're going to have to deal with the reality of the situation and the long-term impact, but I'm kind of just giving myself a bit of a break for a minute.
Before we kind of delve into the movie, that's kind of a question I was thinking about. How do you feel as someone who, you've been working for a long time in the industry and not, have you thought about how this might impact going forward? Just the way, we're doing movies and everything, because there's been a lot of changes that been kind of on the fly. We've been alternating. Have you thought about kind of the impact it might have on you in a sense too, being a working actor and all?
Yeah. Well, I think what's obvious is that we need movies, in a way that we've been taking them for granted. And in this situation where we're all locked in, it's a window out of our own world. So, we see how important they are. And I think, as filmmakers, we can see, how important it is now, this sort of streaming world, that obviously we've known is kind of, in many ways, the future of where the content's going to find its place in living rooms. But in this case, we're experiencing that, and theatres being closed, and it's a bit tragic for the moment. But I'm sure they will reopen. But in this moment, we can see how important it is. The home theatre.
No question.
Make sure you get yourself a projector.
That's right. Your own home theatre.
The home theatre, find a wall and get a projector. No, I did, and then certainly I was watching movies on my computer, and then I put the projector up, and I was like, oh, this is such a different experience. So that's sort of like the basics of it, and how is it going to, how's it going to affect content? I still think, the hour and a half, cinematic experience is the perfect time for a moment of escapism without zing and taking over your whole life. So, I still think people are going to enjoy the format.
There you go.
And I don't think we're going to be banned from, making movies forever.
I hope not. we wouldn't have anything to talk about then. Then we need to.
What are we going to do? But also, I think it's going to affect the content. What kind of messages do we want to put in the world, and what do we want to feed to our minds? I think in this situation, we're hyper-conscious about what we're choosing to consume, because we have limited time, and we know this time's sort of precious, and let's use it. And especially because I think we're so sensitive right now, our minds are let's just make sure we stay in a good mood, because this is difficult shit to deal with. So what do you put into your consciousness that keeps, you in a good frame of mind?
No, I think that's well said. I think just keeping yourself mentally stimulated and kind of, well at this point, that's important too, in so many ways.
Everyone's like their own shrink right now.
It's unprecedented times for sure. This movie right up my alley, because I've always been someone into kind of not only just horror and thriller genre, which I've always been a huge fan of, but I always been fascinated with dreams and what the meaning of certain dreams and elements of that. So What kind of attracted you to this film? Because it's got a lot of different things. Like I found myself Googling what a dream catcher was afterwards too, to try to find out more about it.
Yeah.
And the origins of it. What attracted you initially to the role and the script?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was initially sort of just drawn into this sort of psychodrama between the stepmother and the kid, and this sort of kind of unusual portrait, and in a way this sort of, you know, the evil stepmother fantasy gets to become like a premise for a storytelling. And then, obviously, what's exciting about it is the magic of the story and what is the dream catcher and the kind of mythology of that, which we kind of had to kind of work out on the fly, a lot of the logic of what the dream catcher means and so on. But it's a dream catcher with a K, so it's not a dream catcher with C, which is something very different. It's not a metaphor. It's something quite literal. And there is this dark force inside of the material object that manifests nightmares that sort of play out in the psyche of the individual. And my character as the shrink is obviously trying to create a logic and a solution to the problem in the real world. And as the story plays out, you know, becomes entangled in the web. And that itself was quite interesting too, from going from one point of view to the complete opposite. And at what point does things, you know, completely change in her perspective? That's all kind of exciting stuff. But then obviously, you know, dreams themselves are fascinating. What do they mean? Do they mean anything? Fear. What is fear? You know. Some people would say the only thing to fear is fear itself, because most of it's imagined. I mean, we all have this super intense experience right now of anxiety and how that affects our sense of logic and being out of control and this sense of the unknown. Is very much what the story is tapping into and playing with. And in the scope of dreams, you know, that's this sort of unconscious space where things sort of happen to us or happen in a kind of magical way. They don't necessarily make sense, but they often impact us in a really emotional kind of real, we have a real kind of experience of the dreams. And there's still, when you look at science or medicine, people don't really have an explanation still for what they mean, or you know, and there's still kind of mystery there. So that was fun, like, you know, zipping around YouTube trying to figure out what this character's perspective was going to be. And I was looking at cognitive behavioral therapy, and this character is very much about trying to train this kid out of the nightmare. And cognitive behavioral therapy is very much about like having exposure to an experience at a certain level. Like, you know, she's encouraging the kid to draw out the dreams so he can see them, so then they can become, he can control them on some level by having a context for them. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, you might rehearse, if you're afraid to fly on airplanes or something, you'll rehearse different tasks until you can finally get onto the plane. And you know, facing that fear is one way of getting out of the fear, by being in the experience. So that was an interesting kind of exploration. And then I got into this idea that embracing your nightmares, you know, don't be afraid of your nightmares, like welcome your nightmares, because they're a real opportunity for you to look at yourself. And in a way, it kind of feels like this too, you know, the experience we're in now is a sort of a nightmare. It's so surreal. But it is an opportunity for you to really look at yourself and look at your own mind and how your perception how your perception affects your perception.
In a way, yes.
It affects your experience, is what I mean to say. Like, we really, and I feel like we just have to be in the moment that we're in, because we don't quite know where it's going to go, but we know that we can be in it. We'll be okay in the moment, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But how that affects this story, ask me another question.
Well, here's one question I kind of wonder. I've done so much work over here, so I kind of wonder, like, what are some things you like to do in your free time? Any hobbies or interests? I mean, maybe now you're delving into some of them, but what are some things you like to do to get away, in a sense, from the industry, to kind of clear your mind in a lot of ways and reset and just kind of do something different?
Well, I love like basic things like hiking, I mean, to be in nature, I think, is always refreshing. I've kind of gone into gardening of late. I have this little papaya tree, which is growing, and I'm watching papayas, and I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that these plants are here. Like, especially in the situation we're in, I'm like, everybody should have food growing in their garden. Like, why should we be dependent on this food chain? We should have food that we have, like, immediate access to. Like, that seems so logical to me in reflection. Oh God, I don't know. What does one like to do? Hang out with friends, be with family.
I like that you like to do.
Things.
I always thought to be a great actor, and in a sense, and just even be a performer, you need to be a real person first and have real life experiences to bring into your work. And I actually like hearing that a normal way of life is just kind of how you keep things rolling. You don't do anything extraordinary. You just kind of live life, and that's how you're able to tell stories and be relatable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I do extreme things. I've done a lot of traveling, and I've done a lot of kind of extreme things as well. But I think the things that give you a sense of grounding are very, very simple, like being in nature and being with people that you love. And strangely enough, I think gardening is a great opportunity to kind of like engage with nature and get your hands dirty, and it's just so relaxing.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time now and talking to me. Been a long time fan of your work. I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is Phone Booth, so I go back in the day. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Right. Good talking to you.
You too. Stay safe.
And you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.